I'm going to show you how I am currently working with Claude Code and other coding tools like Codex. So I developed this project planning methodology called festival methodology. So here's festival methodology repo. Basically, it's a hierarchical agent execution framework. And I've been working a lot on this FestCLI. Haven't got to a beta release yet, but basically what this does is gives me a agentic guided system that forces agents to follow the methodology. So right here, here's one running. I just kicked off, and this guided system works like this. So I tell the agent to begin executing the festival after it's been planned with the fest execute command. So fest execute, it gives them these instructions, tells the agents all the context documents that it needs to look at to execute the festival, and then it gives them the steps that they need to follow. So right now they're setting up a new project from scratch with a project scaffold task. And then if I open this, so here's what the festival ends up looking like when it's planned out. So this is where I'm at now. So we've got phases. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phases for this festival: foundation, scaffolding, navigation, shell integration. So we started here. We've got quality gates. So these gates over here, these ones are default, and it applies at the end of the creation. I'll apply all the gates. What that does is it creates these gate files. So like test and verify, code review, review results, iterate, and then finally commit. So for each one of these sequences, it'll go through these files. Each one of these is like a kind of like a Claude Code to-do list. Tells the agent exactly what it needs to do, checks these off, and then when it finishes the sequence, it moves on to the next, and then just goes through that. Eventually, it'll move on to the next phase, and it'll continue until the entire festival is implemented. And there's some ergonomic commands like fgo, and here it's run best commands, best progress, 2%, best status, and I can jump back with fgo. That works with fest links. So all these links are like the link festivals I have on my machine, and these just allow that quick toggle between the festival directory and the implementation directory. This is what the commits look like from Claude Code. Claude Code does a really good job of following the commit instructions exactly, so it gives me really detailed descriptions of exactly what's in each commit. So all these are from festivals that are running. Example of what Codex commits end up looking like with the same instructions I give to Claude Code. Very light, so they're more like human looking than Claude Code. Not quite as detailed, but still detailed enough to know what the commit was focused on. So that just shows it works with both Claude Code and Codex. Those are the only two I tried it with, other than Gemini CLI when it first came out, but it was just not useful in general then, so I haven't tried it since then. Yeah, so I'll go back and start talking about Fest again. Here's another festival. This one's a pretty big one. So like when I first started out with festival, if you read this current README on my GitHub, I explained like the basic framework for the festival, like how do you structure a festival, like what needs to go in there. And the way I was working with this initially was I had this festivals directory, and the CLI was just basic, and it would like help sync the festival files as I'm tuning them to your machine. So what I would do is say I would point the agents at this one README. This README is fairly light, and then it points the agents here with the instruction to only read what they need to read to understand what they need to do. So they would just reference like the different templates and everything as it needed to. But what happens sometimes is that even with that doesn't start like the just-in-time approach of context management, they would often still read everything, which is about 130 something thousand tokens. So for like Claude Code instance, you have 200,000 token context window fills 130,000 tokens with festival methodology resources. So it was obviously pretty inefficient, but it also still worked extremely well. So the results of planning a festival following methodology for a very long time have been basically 100% accurate at the end of the execution. I rarely have to go and correct the agents. I really have to do basically any iteration as long as the festival is properly planned. Because the agents will correct their own mistakes, they'll do the commits, they'll do the code reviews, and then they'll iterate if they make mistakes to fix whatever didn't go according to plan before the commit. It was already working extremely well. And then I had this idea of just templating out the structure because most of it's standardized and there's some variance in how it would end up being created. So it would be harder to visualize what's going on. I added that to FestCLI and saw immediate reduction in token usage of about 94%. And then after that, I started focusing on visualization and guiding the agents to create the structure. So the structures are very consistent and reduce the planning process. Initially, it would take me 1 to 2 weeks to plan out a really good festival for a new greenfield project end-to-end build. And then when I executed, it'd be basically perfect at the end of the execution according to my plan. So if my plan wasn't good, the execution wouldn't be that great. It would still be better than without the plan, but it wouldn't necessarily be 100% accurate. Still the case now. If the plan is not good, it's going to follow the plan perfectly. But to get a perfect plan initially, it would take me 1 to 2 weeks. Over time, it got down to about 2 to 3 hours, and now it's around, depending on the scope of the plan, but the same size plan that would take me 1 to 2 weeks when I first started using this method before I actually find it and open this repo. That same scope of plan now takes me about 30 minutes. And that's because the guidance system instructs the agents on the planning, so I can go from a rough goal or maybe some initial specs or requirements, and I can just say, look at this directory with the scope of requirements in it, and plan a festival for this work. And it'll do it, and it handles most of the planning, and it'll go and check things, start the plan, do research, do everything it needs to do to create a good plan. And the guidance system helps instruct it and move it along. Let's go back to the camp festival. So it does it with this execute command. So you saw when we started, we were on the first task, now we're on the ninth task. And each task is equivalent to basically Claude Code plan. So each one has multiple to-dos that it's doing, but at every step I can just keep running best execute. But that also doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So you're executing, maybe you think, well, I'm going to execute once. Well, what do I do next? So you can also run best next is the same information. So it tells them which sequence they're in, what phase they're in, what tasks they're working on, the path to the task document itself, with instructions to read it, and all the context documents they need to know about. And also, one other thing I forgot to mention, the reason the system works so good is because it breaks down complex goal down to sub-goals. So each of these levels, you have your festival goal, you have your phases, you have your phase goals. Each sequence has sequence goal. And then each task has their own goal as well. So we're basically breaking down the work from the highest level down to every single individual task that needs to happen. So this is extremely scalable, and it also means that you don't need the largest model. I still get the best results with Opus compared to Sonnet, but the main reason it gets those results isn't actually the model itself. It's that the way a lot of these tools are built, like Claude Code and Codex, there's some instructions in the system prompts that try to keep the agent, the lower quality models, working a certain way and not going off and doing the wrong thing, and that can kind of throw off the guidance. All right, now I'm going to explain the reason I've got different directories. So I work in a way where I've got a lot of projects being built at the same time. So I came up with this concept called campaigns. So a campaign is basically like an AI planning directory, and inside a campaign you have festivals, directories, and projects. So you may have multiple projects for a campaign. It's basically like a related context for a workspace. So like right now I've got background colors that tell me which project I'm in. So I know I'm in gray and has green for projects. So it means I'm in guild. This is a project called Brainyard, blue black background. And I can do that with about 4 or 5 different major initiatives at the same time. On each one they have multiple projects, you could have 5 or so being built at the same time. And that kind of explains that. So I think I've been working towards for a while. I started this project called Guild. So Guild what Guild started out as is like a building AI agent framework that had the same support as all the agent frameworks on the market at the time, but as I started building it, I started just realizing like things that other frameworks were doing I didn't really like or that could be done better, and it kind of evolved into this massive, basically, research project. So like one of the core concepts of Guild was this finding methodology that turned into Festival, and another one was campaigns, which is AI workspace. So AI workspace, it'll be easier for to show you kind of like the end goal. So Guild served as a framework for building like AI agent framework that build anything that I want that I would use AI agent framework for, but with a like easier conceptual model. So in Guild, you have guilds, which are your agent teams. You have your campaigns, which is your AI planning workspace. You have your festivals, which is your complex plans, multi-step plans, and you can assign different agents to different steps in the festival, which I actually discovered wasn't actually that important. So, and then there's a bunch of tools, and for instance, I had LSP support for like 35 LSP servers, research support. Basically, like anything I had in any of them that helps me navigate code, generate code, built into Guild so that the agents could do it. I also had a corpus tool for like basically like any like knowledge that's related to that campaign. You could put into your corpus directory, and it gets loaded into the shared rack system for that campaign. So what I'm really working towards with Guild, or what I was working towards with Guild before, it just kind of turned into more of a research project, is that so, like this interface. Basically, this makes everything I do on all these different initiatives, with each initiative having multiple projects. So like up here I've got like the campaigns as tabs, and each tab has a different background color. So I know like when I'm in this when I'm working on this shrapnel initiative, when I'm got this green background, working on this brain art initiative. When it's blue, it's Guild. Purple for anywhere. And each one I can have as many projects as I want, going on at the same time. I can have as many sessions as I want. Each session I can have as many agents as I want. So it just allows me to like in this example, I could like basically have like 100 agents all in this one screen, and I can see the festival status and have like easy way to get through. And working on this tool, this interface, just to make my personal development process easier. So like same kind of navigation as like Claude Code and some different things in there too. Like in the actual GUI interface, I can do like master planner, and I can talk directly to the master planner agent in the same chat as the code writer and the doc writer, or I can just message all of them at the same time. If I need to send the same prompt to all of them without having to type the same prompt 3 times. Yeah, so like this interface basically explains my workflow outside of festivals pretty good. And like kind of use an example like the visibility I have with festivals. And additionally, like with the Guild tools, before I started using CLI coding agents before they were even available for the public, I didn't have time to build them myself. So the way I was using it to build projects is I'd always start with a scaffold. So like the problem with that is if you're iterating with the agent and you're iterating on the design, you can come up with different scaffolds, and you may realize like by the time you thought that the scaffold was going to work, you create it, you spend all the time laying out the structure, creating all the files, and then you realize, oh wait, I actually need to go a different direction. And then you have to spend the same time going and fixing the layout of the project, and it was just annoying. So this is one of the first tools I built right before I started using CLI agents. So what this is, it takes a scaffold layout that you get from Claude or a ChatGPT app, and you just type T2S and paste in the scaffold, and it creates all the files. Basically like a project scaffolding tool. But it would do it from those ASCII scaffold images like this, like that you can get from ChatGPT and Claude. But it was a lot more difficult than it sounds, mainly because both apps use different formats for their scaffold that they display. So this works for both of them. And it's also useful in Guild as a tool for the agents, because agents in CLI, they can also generate the scaffold and then use the scaffold tool to actually create all the directories for it, instead of going and calling all the bash tools that they need to actually create the scaffold. So it reduced the context window below from just repeated tool calling. Also, with my Claude Code Max subscription, I can actually have like the freedom to kind of test without having to worry about running a giant personal build. So early on, that was one of the main priorities for me, was being able to use Claude Code as a provider. So in Guild, I have support for all common providers, in addition like Deep Infra and some other smaller ones. So I also have a provider abstraction that uses Claude Code Go as a provider. So I built this SDK, released it a couple days after they made it possible to write wrapper SDKs for Claude Code binary. I think it was like 3 days later. And it's got full support for Claude Code. So I can do anything, I can do Claude Code with it. But I can also Guild, I can interact with it as if it's just a standard API provider. So all my agents I can just choose, like, do I want to use a Claude Code agent, or do I want to use an OpenAI API agent? I can do the same thing with Codex and other CLI tools, and really just get like full benefits of the CLI, whether that be subscription, all in one cost, or different tools and stuff that CLI has available. I can get that all in the same interface. Alright, so now let's go back, and like the camp festival has completed, so the status has completed. Another thing I forgot to go over earlier. Alright, so festivals are all directory based, so if it's status of festivals, it's actually going to a physical directory. So I have like my active festivals, and these are ones that are actively being built all the time. Like, so sometimes it's just one that I put in active, I'm still kind of working on it, adding new phases and pods running occasionally or whatnot. Or I plan to run it soon. Then when it's completed, new status, set completed, it moves to the physical directory here, so I don't think I committed. So all my planning documents are in that campaign. Alright, so yeah. So all of my festival statuses, I like all the ones I've completed, all the ones active, are related to this campaign, which is the Guild framework. So a bunch of planned ones. But what's really cool, like another thing that's really cool about this, is before festival starts, so if I go like planned one, so I can also just physically review these plans, or agents review them before it actually executes. And since the plans are followed 100% pretty much every time, I can catch issues with these plans before there's actually any code changes made. So that allows me to not only just see exactly what the agents would do and kind of get an idea, but I can catch things like, I'll say I forgot to plan out a feature that we need. And I can have agents help with that too, or I just do it myself. So I do a little bit of both. And I very like the amount of involvement I have based on the project. So like this is all stuff that's personal developer tools for me. So these ones I'm a little bit more comfortable with them just running autonomously all the time than I am with something I'm doing for like a paid project, or for instance, I've worked on a couple projects where somebody started the project not really knowing too much about software engineering and got a little bit ahead of themselves with AI tools, and basically created like a project that started off good and then it just turned into a complete mess that they can't maintain, they can't figure out how to fix. So in those cases I'm a little bit more strict with my physical review. But when it's something I built from scratch, like a greenfield project, I feel more comfortable because I know everything about the project already. So I can just plan it out, do like a brief review, I don't have to go through using detail, and make sure that the structure's right. The FCLI helps with that too. So like for this one, just run best validate, and it tells me like all the festival structure. There's these template markers that the agent can replace, and there's a wizard that'll help the agent figure out how to fill out the markers, and best markers commands to define them. And those markers just tell like the agent, gives them a hint on what to replace the marker with, so they're properly filling out the templates, and it does it in a way that doesn't overwhelm the agent and convince the agent needs to create a script to fill out the markers and then not actually thoughtfully fill out the markers. So like, it gives them guidance. So yeah, so like the status of Guild, we'll go back to Guild again. So Guild's like this giant project, 374,000 lines to go. It's a pretty big project. very complex. Kind of one of the mistakes I made is that, with building it is I built the agent framework, and then I decided to go and add that interface as a TUI tool. And agents are kind of bad with TUIs, especially for super complex ones. And that one still required a lot of focus, so I had to write the first line from scratch. And it worked, and then I took on some paid projects, and I had to lower my time I spent on building Guild at the time. And I tried to do more automation before I really fleshed out the festival methodology. That's where it is today. I left the process going with the early version of festival method before I actually formalized it and renamed it festival. And it ran for about 2 weeks, debugging, working on the TUI interface, and basically just worked the entire integration. I haven't had time to actually go in and fix the code yet. So that's kind of what happened with Guild. So I learned a lot from there, but I also needed parts of Guild as like my day-to-day work. So like the main thing with Guild, you have campaigns, you had the planning system in Guild was called objectives, and it was basically the same thing as festival methodology, but that evolved into the festival methodology. I pulled that out because that's something I needed every day. I've been using it every day since about 2025. And the other thing, concept is the AI workspace, so campaigns. So like I've got my Guild campaign, I've got many campaigns going on at the same time. All of the campaigns are basically set up similarly. So you have this top level repo, and then I have like all my standard context directories I need for each repo. Festivals or projects has all of my submodules for all the repos related to the campaign, and then I have work trees and AI docs and feedback and just everything I need for this particular initiative. And it's also tracked in Git. So here I'm not so strict about the command history because I don't really care too much, but I want to be able to recover any of the plans that may get changed or that agents could like. Basically, I want to be able to recover any valuable work related to this initiative that could get corrupted by the agents. I haven't had to do that at all, but it's a good practice in my opinion. And also another reason for that is most CLI agents rely on this Git directory. They use the Git index to actually navigate your code. So if you want to like go into Claude Code and use the @ symbol to reference something, you have to have that Git index available for them. So that's another reason for it. And so yeah, so I pulled out campaign, I pulled out festival methodology, and there's other subsystems in Guild that I wanted to go ahead and start using for other projects. So I've been helping out a friend of mine with this project called Brainyard. It's a multi-agent chat app. So again, in here you have his agent library, and you can select different agents. So I could like deselect Benjamin Franklin, but James Clear. And now when I send messages, it goes to all the agents at the same time. So the design for this came out of the functionality. I can send a message in this main chat. I have these 4 agents here, and then there's also an agent here. So the agent in this chat, the wizard, he gets all the information from here summarized down to manageable amount of information and makes a decision. So you can kind of get like a different perspective on everything that you want to talk to. And you also go in here and chat with individual agents. So that's one thing that came out of Guild. And another one, me and my brother built this project over Christmas. So this one relies a lot on the RAG system from Guild. So like in Guild, I built a RAG system like completely from scratch. No reliance on an existing RAG system. I just built one from scratch with program DB. And the idea of this one is you can share projects, and all the chats in that project have the shared context. So like in this first session, I discussed an Android app, and then I asked the second one what language are we using. So we're pulling from the shared memory that we're using Kotlin. So Guild itself, while it's not a finished project, the components in it are pretty good, and the R&D that went into it has allowed me to just build things like crazy.